As Vincent Magwenya, the presidential spokesperson, has been descended upon by the world's media, longing for a comment on perhaps latest developments or an insider's view on what's been happening over the last 24 hours in the presidency. So we're hoping to bring you some of that live picture. I'm not sure how much we can share at this stage. I don't know if we have a camera on that. But there's a great deal of interest in what he might have to say. We do have our reporters there, so whatever we miss in the moment, we will certainly get for you. In fact, let's take it live right now.
Ought to be reflected and expressed in the declaration. So I won't characterize them as objections as such, but there were lengthy debates. There were issues that were debated in excess of 3 hours in one evening. And there were issues that were resolved fairly speedily because they were straightforward. And so what is important for us is the spirit that characterized these engagements and the exercise itself. The spirit was enormously positive, and the spirit was that of countries who are committed to their responsibility to their citizens as well as the rest of the world.
Was there no indication, was there no concern that the United States was not present in the room? The biggest economy in the world taking over presidency, did no one raise that as a concern?
Look, everyone noted that. Everyone noted that. Everyone could have not pretend as if that was not a reality. You'll recall that the U.S. is one of the originators, leading originators of the G20. It is actually quite tragic that the U.S. Adopted the stance that it chose to adopt and boycott the summit, considering its historical role in the formation of the G20 and considering its responsibility to the world as the largest economy. Be that as it may, it's a short-term blip. The U.S. will take over the presidency of the G20 and will be able to engage on some of these issues in a constructive manner.
So what about countries that have... What's the nature of the U.S.? Are they still attending tomorrow?
I was hoping to get more questions about the declaration and move away from the U.S. No, they're not attending. We've made our position very clear. This is a breach of protocol, what they were suggesting. You cannot have a head of state handing over the presidency and the leadership of such an important premium or premier forum for macroeconomic issues and other related issues being handed over to a junior embassy official. I mean, it's a breach of protocol. It has never happened before, and it was never going to happen for the first time here in South Africa.
Do you think it speaks? So let's talk about countries that have alliance with the United States of America. Did they make any kind of comment or contribution regarding the matter or speaking up for them?
No, there was no discussion about the U.S.'s absence. The discussion was fairly much focused on the substance of the declaration. That's what the discussions were focused on. Everybody knew by the time they got here earlier this week or even last week that the U.S. had chosen to boycott the summit. There was nothing that was going to be done further than that.
What does this do for the position? What does this do for the position of South Africa now that the U.S. is going to take over? How do you think you're going to move forward? And will South Africa still continue?
We're going to move forward very constructively. We're going to continue engaging with the U.S. as we speak. We're in the middle of trade negotiations with the U.S. And so we will move forward quite constructively. The G20 is about 85% of the world's GDP. The G20 is about 75% of world's trade. It's not about one country. So we will move forward very constructively. We're going to be part of the Troika with the US and the UK in determining the agenda going forward. And so we see that as a constructive, or rather as an opportunity for us to continue engaging constructively. We've always done that. We've always done that as South Africa. We've always sought to maintain friendly relations with all nations. We've always sought to be constructive in our engagements. And at no point has South Africa ever played an obstructive role. We don't boycott summits. We don't boycott meetings. We don't boycott countries. We engage, and so that's what we'll continue doing.
Apparently invited too many people who are not even part of the G20. What do you make of those comments?
No, what did we do? We made the G20 to be a lot more inclusive. we extended the scope of sectors within the ambit of the G20. What did that do? It elevated the profile of the G20. It gave a lot of space or room to voices that ordinarily would have not been part of the process. And that's what the world is crying out for. That let's hear those voices that have been voiceless for the longest time. Hence our theme, solidarity, equality, and sustainability. These are issues that are not a preserve of the few. These are issues that have an enormous impact on the rest of the world. And therefore it was important that we do that. As the president kind of said, with a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, it's not a G100, it's a G million, and that's good. And that has created the kind of excitement that we now have on the G20.
We heard rumors that
I just have one question outside of the declaration.
Sorry?
we heard that the summit will take action against the US.
No, there was no such. Yes.
One question outside of the declaration.
Sorry?
One question outside of the declaration.
Yes.
China and South Africa have different cooperation on climate change, green development, and other issues that feature are part of the G20.
Yes.
From your perspective, how can China and South Africa, including the rest of the continent, work together to safeguard the rights and interests of emerging economies through multilateral structures and bilateral structures?
Well, at a bilateral level, we have a very strong and very warm political and trade relationship with China. Secondly, we cooperate a lot in a number of multilateral platforms on such issues. And so it's only natural that you will have an affirmation of our alignment with China on these issues. China has become the second largest economy in the world. It's leading in various areas of technological advancement. It's increasing its investments here in South Africa, which is something that we welcome. The Chinese market is opening up more and more to Chinese goods and products, and the rest of the continent, by the way, is benefiting from that. And so what that statement says is that we're only going to strengthen our resolve to work closely with China in advancing a lot of these issues that are expressed in our declaration, or in the G20 declaration.
What does the declaration say about the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
I'm being pulled here. Just let me take one question. Sorry.
What does the declaration mention about the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
So what the declaration on that one, that's an interesting question. So what the declaration does, it affirms the centrality of the UN Charter with respect to the peaceful resolution of conflicts and avoiding the use of force in resolving issues of dispute. And the declaration highlights in particular the four of the gravest conflicts in the world, namely the DRC, Sudan, Ukraine, and Palestine. And so if you're looking for the mention specifically of Ukraine, it's there. But that mention is in the context of an approach, rather, of how we deal with these conflicts, rather than the use of force, which, as we all know, never yields or amounts into anything constructive for all those involved.
What about Israel and Palestine? Any mention?
Well, as I said, Palestine is mentioned, and there's the affirmation of the UN Charter, which is something important to note, that the G20 never sees itself outside of the multilateralism of the United Nations. And so the declaration affirms that the UN Charter remains the sort of central guiding point, along with international law, in which we ought to look at or approach issues of dispute and avoid the use of force and commit ourselves to peaceful resolution of conflicts. Guys, thank you so much. I'll come back.